Grace Miller thought cleaning hotel rooms would be the hardest part of her day, until a mysterious millionaire crashed through her door in the middle of a storm. What she didn't know was that this accidental encounter would expose a decade-old scandal that destroyed his ability to trust women, while revealing the shocking truth about who really owned the roof over her head. As their forbidden attraction ignited behind closed doors, Grace discovered that falling for the wrong man could cost her everything: her job, her home, and her brother's future. But when the hotel staff started whispering and her own family turned against him, she faced an impossible choice: protect her heart or risk it all for a love that could either save them both or destroy everything she'd worked for. Little did she know he was about to make a decision that would change both their lives forever. If you want to know how this dangerous romance unfolds, hit subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from around the world. The rain hit the hotel windows like angry fists. Grace Miller pressed her back against her tiny staff room door and listened to the storm rage outside. Thunder rolled across the sky, shaking the old building down to its bones. She folded another uniform shirt and placed it on her narrow bed. The laundry basket sat empty now. Her shift was done. Finally. Grace kicked off her work shoes and wiggled her toes. 12 hours of cleaning rooms, changing sheets, and scrubbing bathrooms. Her feet ached, her back ached, everything ached, but at least she had tomorrow off. She pulled out her phone and opened the podcast app. Something light. Something that would help her forget about Mrs. Peterson in room 314, who complained about everything: the towels, the pillows, even the way Grace knocked on the door. Grace pressed play and settled onto her bed. The small room felt safe, quiet. It was hers, even if it was only 10 feet by 12 feet, even if it had no windows, even if the walls were thin enough to hear the ice machine humming down the hall. She reached for another uniform when she heard the keycard beep. Her door swung open. A man walked in. Grace screamed. She grabbed the first thing she could reach, a spray bottle of cleaner, and pointed it at him like a weapon. "Get out! Get out!" The man threw his hands up. His suitcase crashed to the floor. "Wait, I'm sorry, I said get out." Grace's heart hammered against her ribs. She was in her old college t-shirt and shorts. Her hair was messy. She looked like a mess, and this stranger was just standing there, staring. "Please," the man said. His voice was deep and calm, but his hands shook slightly. "I think there's been a mistake. The front desk gave me this room number." "This is my room." Grace heard footsteps pounding down the hallway. Thank God. Someone heard her scream. "What's going on here?" Marisol appeared in the doorway. The head housekeeper looked from Grace to the man and back again. Her dark eyes flashed with anger. "Sir, you need to step back, now." The security guard appeared behind Marisol, a big guy named Tony who worked nights. He looked ready to tackle someone. "There's been a mistake," the man said again. He was tall, really tall, and his skin was dark brown, smooth like coffee. His suit was expensive. Grace could tell that much. Everything about him screamed money. "The front desk clerk gave me a key card for this room." Grace noticed something then. He kept his hands raised. He hadn't moved closer to her. He stayed near the door, giving her space. "What's your name?" Marisol demanded. "Ethan Cole. I checked in about 20 minutes ago." Marisol pulled out her radio. "Front desk, this is Marisol. We have a situation in staff room 112. A guest was given access to an occupied employee room." Static crackled. Then a young voice answered. "Sorry, what? Staff room 112 shows as empty in our system." "Well, it's not empty. Grace Miller lives here, has for 2 years." Grace watched the man, Ethan, close his eyes and take a deep breath. She could see his chest rising and falling quickly, too quickly. "I'm really sorry," he said to her directly. "This never should have happened. I'll leave right now." There was something in his voice, something that sounded like pain, like shame. Grace lowered her spray bottle just a little. "Mari, what's the status up there?" The voice on the radio belonged to Mr. Klein, the hotel manager. He sounded stressed. "Room assignment error. We need you up here to sort this out." Tony crossed his arms. "Sir, you need to come with me." Ethan nodded. He picked up his suitcase handle. "Again, I'm truly sorry for frightening you. That was never my intention." He looked at Grace one more time. His eyes were dark brown, almost black, and sad. Really, really sad. Grace found herself nodding. It's okay, just a mix-up. No, Ethan said firmly. It's not okay. You should feel safe in your own room. Then he was gone, following Tony down the hallway toward the elevator. Marisol lingered in the doorway. You all right, mija? Grace sank onto her bed. Her hands were still shaking. Yeah, just scared me. You sure? We can call the police if... No, he didn't do anything wrong. Just walked into the wrong room. Marisol studied her face. You're too trusting sometimes. He kept his distance, Mari, and his hands up. He could have, but he didn't. Still, a man you don't know in your private space. That's not right. Grace knew Marisol was right, but something about the way Ethan had looked at her stuck in her mind. Not like she was prey, not like she was invisible, the way most guests looked at her. Like she was a person who deserved an apology. I need to go deal with this mess, Marisol said. You sure you're okay alone? I'm fine, really. After Marisol left, Grace locked her door and sat on her bed. Her podcast was still playing in her earbuds, but she couldn't focus on the words. She kept thinking about Ethan's face, the way his hands shook even though he tried to stay calm. Rich men didn't usually shake like that. Rich men usually acted like they owned the world. But Ethan looked like someone who was trying very hard not to fall apart. 10 minutes later, Grace found herself walking toward the lobby. She told herself she just wanted some ice. Her little fridge was empty and she was thirsty. But really, she wanted to know what happened. If the man, Ethan, was okay. The lobby was busier than usual for this time of night. Mr. Klein stood behind the front desk, typing furiously on his computer. The young clerk who worked evenings, Jake, looked like he wanted to disappear. Ethan sat in one of the big chairs near the window. He stared at his hands in his lap. His suitcase waited beside him. Grace grabbed a cup from the coffee station and filled it with ice. She moved slowly, listening. Systems error, Mr. Klein was saying into his phone. No, sir, the guest is not filing a complaint, but we need to comp his room and... Ethan's head came up. He looked around the lobby and his eyes found Grace. She froze by the coffee station. He started to stand up, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, he just nodded at her. A small, polite nod. Grace surprised herself by walking over. Are you okay? She asked. Ethan blinked. I should be asking you that. You're the one who got scared. You look... Grace searched for the right words. You look upset. I'm fine. But he wasn't fine. Grace had 3 younger cousins and a little brother. She knew what panic looked like, the fast breathing, the way someone held their shoulders too tight, the way they couldn't quite meet your eyes. Do you want some water or something? That's very kind, but Ethan stopped. He rubbed his hands together. Actually, yes, water would be nice. Grace walked back to the coffee station and filled a cup. When she returned, Ethan was breathing a little easier. Thank you, he said, taking the cup. I don't usually... This kind of situation makes me nervous. What kind of situation? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Being accused of something I didn't do. Grace sat down in the chair across from him. No one accused you of anything. It was just a room mix-up. Still, a man in a woman's room without permission. That's... He shook his head. That's serious. You knocked first, Grace said. Then she realized how silly that sounded. I mean, you used the key card, but you weren't sneaking around, and you apologized right away. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you were frightened. Grace studied his face. There was a story here. Something that happened before tonight. Something that made him think one simple mistake could ruin everything. Mr. Cole? Mr. Klein appeared beside them, holding a key card. We've got you set up in suite 408. And of course, there's no charge for your stay. We're very sorry about the confusion. Ethan stood and took the key card. Thank you, and please make sure your staff knows this was entirely my fault, not theirs. The young man at the desk was just doing his job. Mr. Klein looked surprised. Most guests would be demanding more than a free room. Most guests would be threatening to leave bad reviews online. That's very understanding of you, sir. Ethan picked up his suitcase. He looked at Grace one more time. I hope the rest of your evening is peaceful. Thank you, Grace said. I hope you get some sleep. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he walked toward the elevator. Grace watched him go. Something about Ethan Cole didn't add up. Rich men didn't usually worry about front desk clerks getting in trouble. Rich men didn't usually thank hotel maids for cups of water. Rich men didn't usually look like they were carrying invisible wounds. The storm got worse around midnight. Grace lay in her narrow bed, listening to the thunder roll across the sky. The power flickered twice, but held. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face. The way his hands shook when he held them up, the way he kept apologizing, even after everyone understood it was just a mistake. Grace knew about carrying invisible wounds. She'd been carrying her own for years. Like the way most guests looked right through her, like she was furniture, like she didn't matter, like the way her high school boyfriend had dumped her the week before graduation. "You're going nowhere, Grace," he'd said. "I need someone with ambition." Like the way her father had left when she was 15. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone one morning, leaving her mom with 3 kids and a pile of bills. Some people learned early that they were disposable, that they had to work twice as hard just to be seen. But tonight, Ethan had seen her. Really seen her. Even scared and holding a spray bottle like an idiot, he'd looked at her like she mattered. Grace rolled over and pulled her blanket up to her chin. Outside, the storm raged on. The next morning came gray and wet. Grace's day off felt different somehow. Usually she slept late and then spent the afternoon doing laundry or grocery shopping. Small, quiet things. But today she found herself thinking about Ethan. Was he still in the hotel? Had he slept okay after everything that happened? Grace made coffee in her tiny microwave and checked her phone. Her brother Liam had texted her. "Working late again tonight. Save me some leftovers if you cook anything good." Grace smiled. Liam was 22 and worked nights at Murphy's Diner across town. He was saving money for college, taking classes during the day, and serving coffee and pie until 2 in the morning. She was proud of him, proud and worried. Liam worked too hard, just like she did. But they didn't have much choice. Grace pulled on jeans and a sweater. She needed groceries, and maybe some fresh air. The storm had passed, leaving everything clean and bright. She grabbed her purse and opened her door. Ethan stood in the hallway. Grace jumped. "Oh, you scared me." "Sorry, I was just—" He held up a white envelope. "I wanted to give you this." "What is it?" "An apology. A real one. In writing." Grace took the envelope. It was heavy paper, expensive. Her name was written on the front in neat handwriting. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "Yes, I did." Ethan was wearing jeans today and a simple gray sweater. He looked younger somehow, less formal, but his eyes still held that sadness she'd noticed last night. "Are you heading out?" he asked. "Just grocery shopping. Exciting stuff." "Would you—" Ethan stopped, started again. "Would you mind if I walked with you? I mean, if you're walking, I don't want to intrude on your day off." Grace studied his face. "Why?" "Honestly, I don't know. I'd like to talk to you, away from the hotel, away from managers and security guards." Grace thought about it. Her mother had always warned her about trusting strangers, especially rich, powerful strangers who could disappear whenever they wanted. But something about Ethan felt safe. Maybe it was the way he asked instead of demanding. Maybe it was the way he stood far enough away that she could say no without feeling trapped. "Okay," she said, "but just walking. I'm not getting in any cars or going anywhere private." "Of course, just walking." They rode the elevator down in comfortable silence. Grace tucked the envelope into her purse. She would read it later, when she was alone. The lobby was busy with guests checking out. Grace kept her head down as they walked toward the doors. She didn't want Mr. Klein seeing her with a guest. That would mean questions, maybe trouble. But Ethan seemed to understand. He didn't walk too close, didn't touch her arm or act familiar. To anyone watching, they might just be strangers heading in the same direction. Outside, the air smelled like rain and fresh leaves. Grace took a deep breath and felt some of her tension ease. "Where's the grocery store?" Ethan asked. "About 4 blocks, nothing fancy." "I like nothing fancy." They walked in silence for half a block. Then Ethan said, "How long have you worked at the hotel?" 2 years, since I turned 25. "Do you like it?" Grace considered the question. "I like having a job. I like having my own place, even if it's tiny. I like some of the people I work with. But it's not exactly my dream job. What would be your dream job? I don't know, Grace said honestly. I used to want to be a teacher, but that requires college, and college costs money I don't have. What stopped you? Life, Grace said simply. My dad left when I was 15. My mom worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. I graduated high school and got a job at a diner, then another job at a grocery store, then the hotel. What about your brother, the one who works nights? Grace was surprised he remembered. Liam's different. He's smart, really smart. He's taking classes during the day and working nights to pay for them. It takes longer that way, but he'll get his degree. And you're helping him. It wasn't a question. Grace glanced at Ethan. How did you know? Because that's what family does, when they care about each other. There was something in his voice, something that made Grace think he knew about helping family, or maybe about not having family to help. They reached the grocery store. Grace expected Ethan to say goodbye and walk away. Instead, he held the door open for her. You're coming in? If that's okay, I need a few things too. Grace grabbed a basket and started down the produce aisle. Ethan walked beside her, his hands in his pockets. What do you do? Grace asked. For work, I mean. Investments, technology mostly, some hospitality. Like hotels? Sometimes. Grace picked up a bag of apples and checked the price. Ethan watched her add up numbers in her head before putting them in her basket. Are you wealthy? She asked suddenly. Then she felt her cheeks burn. Sorry, that's rude. It's not rude, and yes, I'm comfortable. How comfortable? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Comfortable enough that I don't have to check prices on apples. Grace laughed despite herself. Must be nice. It has its advantages and its complications. Like what? Ethan picked up an orange and turned it over in his hands. People make assumptions about who you are, what you want, what you're capable of. Good assumptions or bad assumptions? Both. And neither one is usually accurate. Grace moved on to the bread aisle. Ethan followed. Is that why you seemed so upset last night? Because people might assume the wrong thing? Partly. What else? Ethan was quiet for so long that Grace thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, I haven't been alone in a room with a woman in 10 years. Grace stopped walking. What? Last night, in your room. That was the first time in 10 years I'd been in a private space with a woman. Why? Ethan looked around the store, at the other shoppers, at the fluorescent lights, anywhere but at Grace. Because the last time I was, she accused me of something I didn't do, and it nearly destroyed my life. Grace felt her stomach drop. What kind of accusation? The kind that ruins careers, destroys reputations, makes people cross the street when they see you coming. Grace's mind raced. A rich man, a woman's accusation, something that happened 10 years ago. Was she lying? Grace asked quietly. Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her. Yes, but it didn't matter. By the time the truth came out, the damage was done. That's awful. It was. So I made a rule. No private meetings with women, no dates, no anything. It was safer that way. For 10 years? For 10 years. Grace couldn't imagine living like that, cutting yourself off from half the world because of one person's lies. But last night, she said, last night I broke my rule, not on purpose, but I was alone in a room with you. And for about 30 seconds, I thought it was happening all over again. Grace remembered the way he'd held his hands up, the way he'd stayed near the door, the way he'd looked like he might fall apart. I'm sorry, she said. You have nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one who should apologize. You were just living your life, and I barged in like someone who was given the wrong room key. Ethan almost smiled. You're being very generous. I'm being honest. They finished shopping in comfortable silence. Grace bought the basics, milk, bread, pasta, sauce, enough for a few simple meals. Ethan bought coffee, fruit, and sandwich ingredients. At the checkout, Grace watched him pay without looking at the total. She wondered what it would be like to live without constantly adding up prices in your head. Outside the store, they walked slowly back toward the hotel. Grace wasn't ready for the conversation to end, and Ethan didn't seem to be either. Can I ask you something? Grace said. Sure. Are you lonely? Ethan stopped walking. That's a very direct question. I'm a very direct person. Yes, he said finally. I'm very lonely. Me too. They looked at each other for a moment. Two people who understood what it meant to build walls, to keep yourself safe by keeping yourself separate. Thank you, Ethan said. For what? For treating me like a person, not like a headline or a bank account or a threat, just like a person who made a mistake. Grace felt something shift inside her chest, something warm and unfamiliar. You are a person, she said. A person who deserves kindness. Ethan's eyes went soft. So are you. They stood there on the sidewalk, groceries in hand, the morning sun breaking through the clouds. Grace felt like they were on the edge of something, something that could change everything, or ruin everything. I should get back, she said finally. Of course. Thank you for letting me walk with you. Thank you for the apology letter. I'll read it when I get upstairs. It's not very eloquent. I'm better with numbers than words. I'm sure it's fine. They walked the rest of the way to the hotel in silence. In the lobby, Ethan headed toward the elevator while Grace went to the staff entrance. Grace? She turned. Would it be okay if I said hello? If I see you around the hotel? I don't want to make things weird for you at work. Grace thought about it. As long as it's just hello. Just hello. Grace watched him disappear into the elevator. Then she hurried to her room, her heart beating faster than it should. She had groceries to put away, laundry to do, a brother to text. But first, she had a letter to read. Grace closed her door and set her groceries on the small table by her bed. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled the white envelope from her purse. Her name was written across the front in careful handwriting. Not fancy, but neat, like someone who took time to make things right. She opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. Dear Grace, I want to apologize properly for what happened last night. There's no excuse for walking into your private space without permission, even if it was a mistake. You should never have to feel unsafe in your own room. I'm sorry that my presence frightened you. I'm sorry that you had to grab a weapon to protect yourself. Most of all, I'm sorry that a simple hotel error put you in that position. I know you were kind to me afterward, but you didn't have to be. You could have demanded I be removed from the hotel. You could have filed a complaint. Instead, you brought me water and asked if I was okay. That kindness means more to me than you know. I hope your day off is peaceful and restorative. You deserve that. Respectfully, Ethan Cole Grace read the letter twice, then a third time. It was simple and honest, no fancy words trying to impress her. No promises or grand gestures, just a man taking responsibility and saying thank you. Grace folded the letter carefully and put it in her top drawer, next to the few photos she kept of her family. Her phone buzzed. A text from her brother. Got off work early. Want to grab lunch at Murphy's? My treat. Grace smiled and texted back. Your treat? Did you win the lottery? Boss gave me a bonus for working extra shifts. Come on, I'm buying you a burger. Grace looked around her tiny room. She'd planned to spend the afternoon organizing her closet and maybe watching a movie on her laptop, but lunch with Liam sounded better. Give me 20 minutes. Murphy's Diner sat on the corner of 5th and Main, squeezed between a hardware store and a dry cleaner. The red vinyl booths were cracked but comfortable. The coffee was strong, and the food was honest. Grace found Liam at their usual table by the window. He was reading a textbook while eating fries. Economics? Grace asked, sliding into the booth across from him. Marketing? Did you know that companies spend billions of dollars just to make us want things we don't need? That doesn't surprise me. Liam looked up from his book. You look different today. Different how? I don't know. Less tired, maybe? Grace picked up the menu even though she'd memorized it years ago. I had an interesting morning. Interesting good or interesting bad? I'm not sure yet. The waitress came over, an older woman named Betty who'd worked at Murphy's for 20 years. She knew their order by heart. The usual? She asked. Actually, Grace said, I'll try the chicken sandwich today. Betty raised an eyebrow. Grace had ordered the same thing, a turkey club, every time she'd come here for 2 years. Feeling adventurous? Liam asked after Betty walked away. Maybe, Liam studied his sister's face. Okay, what's going on? You're acting weird. Grace told him about the night before, about Ethan walking into her room by mistake, about the security guard and Mr. Klein and the confusion at the front desk. Some rich guy barged into your room? Liam's voice got loud enough that people at other tables looked over. It was an accident. The front desk gave him the wrong key. That's what he said. Did anyone check his story? Liam, it was obviously a mistake. He was more upset than I was. Of course he was upset. He got caught. Grace felt her temper rise. He didn't get caught doing anything wrong. He made an honest mistake and then apologized for it. And you believe him? Yes, I believe him. Grace, you're too trusting. Rich guys like that, they think they can do whatever they want. You don't know him, and neither do you. You talked to him for 5 minutes. Actually, Grace said, I talked to him for about an hour this morning. He walked with me to the grocery store. Liam stared at her. You went somewhere alone with a complete stranger? We walked to the store, on public streets, in broad daylight. Grace, what are you thinking? I'm thinking he's a nice man who made an honest mistake. He's rich, Grace, really rich from what you're telling me. Men like that don't just want to be friends with hotel maids. Grace felt something cold settle in her stomach. What do you mean? I mean, he wants something from you, and it's probably not conversation. You don't know what you're talking about. I know rich guys, Grace. I serve them coffee and pie every night. They tip well when they want something, and they disappear the second they get it. Betty brought their food. The chicken sandwich looked good, but Grace had lost her appetite. Maybe he's different, she said quietly. Maybe, but probably not. Liam reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I just don't want you to get hurt. I know. You work so hard, Grace. You save every penny. You live in a room the size of a closet so you can help me with school. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are. And you think rich guys can't do that? I think rich guys usually have rich problems, and they don't stick around when things get complicated. Grace pulled her hand back and picked at her sandwich. Liam meant well. He was trying to protect her, but his words stung because they echoed her own fears. What if Ethan was just being polite? What if he felt guilty about scaring her and thought buying her groceries or writing a nice letter would make it go away? What if Liam was right and she was being naive? Just be careful, Liam said. That's all I'm asking. I'm always careful. I know, but this feels different. You're different when you talk about him. Grace looked out the window at the people walking by. Office workers on lunch, breaks, college students heading to class, regular people living regular lives. What if I don't want to be careful, she asked. What if I'm tired of being careful all the time? Then you could get hurt. I could also miss out on something good. Liam was quiet for a long moment. Is that what this is? Something good? I don't know yet, but I'd like the chance to find out. Grace walked back to the hotel slowly. She needed time to think. Liam was right about some things. She was too trusting sometimes. She did have a habit of seeing the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. But he was wrong about Ethan. Grace was sure of it. The way Ethan had looked at her this morning, really looked at her, wasn't the way men looked at women they wanted to use. It was the way lonely people looked at other lonely people, with hope and fear mixed together. Grace knew that look because she'd seen it in the mirror. Back at the hotel, she took the service elevator to avoid the lobby. She didn't want to run into Mr. Klein or answer questions about her day off. Her room felt smaller after spending the morning outside. Grace put her groceries away and tried to read a book, but she couldn't concentrate. Around 4 o'clock, there was a soft knock on her door. Grace looked through the peephole. Marisol stood in the hallway, holding a cup of coffee. You decent? Marisol called. Grace opened the door. What's up? Thought you might want some company and coffee. Marisol came in and handed Grace the cup. She sat on the edge of the bed while Grace took the only chair. How was your day off? Good. Had lunch with Liam. And how's our boy doing? Good. Working hard? Worrying too much? Sounds familiar, Marisol said. Must run in the family. Grace smiled. Marisol had a way of saying hard things gently. It was what made her such a good supervisor. She cared about her people. Mari, can I ask you something? Always? If a guest was interested in you, how would you know? Marisol's eyebrows went up. This about last night? The man who got the wrong room? Maybe. Grace, honey, you need to be very careful. Getting involved with guests is against hotel policy. You could lose your job. But what if it wasn't about the job? What if it was just two people who met and liked each other? Doesn't matter. As long as you work here and he stays here, there's a power imbalance. He could get you fired just by complaining to management. Grace felt her heart sink. Even if he's not that kind of person? Even then. Because other people will assume the worst. They'll say you're sleeping your way to better shifts or bigger tips. They'll say he's taking advantage of his position. But none of that would be true. Truth doesn't always matter, Mija. Perception matters, and the perception would be bad for both of you. Grace stared into her coffee. She hadn't thought about the politics, the way things would look to other people. Is that why you never date guests? Grace asked. One of the reasons. The main reason is that most guests see us as part of the furniture. They don't see us as real people with real lives. What if this guest is different? Marisol was quiet for a moment. What makes you think he's different? Grace told her about the grocery store, about the way Ethan had asked permission to walk with her, about the letter. He wrote you a letter? An apology for scaring me last night. That's unusual, Marisol admitted. Most guests would just pretend it never happened. So you think he might be different? I think he might be, but that doesn't change the rules or the risks. Grace set down her coffee cup. What would you do if you were me? I'd be very careful and very smart, and I'd remember that fairy tales don't usually happen to people like us. After Marisol left, Grace lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. She could step back to safety, or she could jump and see if she could fly. Both options scared her. The next morning, Grace returned to work. She put on her uniform and tied her hair back and tried to pretend everything was normal. But everything felt different. She cleaned rooms on the 3rd floor while wondering if Ethan was still in the hotel. She changed sheets and scrubbed bathrooms while thinking about his letter. She vacuumed carpets while remembering the way he'd asked if he could say hello when he saw her. Around noon, she was cleaning room 312 when she heard voices in the hallway. Excellent condition. The revenue projections look solid. Grace recognized the voice immediately. Ethan. She heard another man respond. The location is perfect. Close to the business district, but not downtown prices. What's the occupancy rate? 82% on average, higher during conference season. Grace realized they were talking about the hotel, about business things that were way above her pay grade. The voices moved down the hallway. Grace went back to making beds, but her mind kept wandering. Was Ethan thinking about buying the hotel? Was that why he was here? If he bought it, would that make things better or worse? Would she be working for him? The thought made her stomach flip. At 3 o'clock, Grace finished her shift and headed to the staff room to clock out. As she turned the corner, she nearly ran into Ethan coming out of the elevator. Grace, hello. Hi. They stood there for a moment, both smiling awkwardly. How was your day? He asked. Fine, busy. How was yours? Also fine, also busy. Grace noticed he was wearing another expensive suit, dark blue this time. He looked like he belonged in boardrooms and fancy restaurants, not hotel hallways talking to maids. Are you checking out today? She asked. Actually, I'm staying a few more days, some business meetings. That's nice. More awkward silence. Grace, I was wondering, Ethan started, then stopped. Actually, never mind. What? I don't want to put you in an awkward position. What were you going to ask? Ethan looked around the hallway, making sure they were alone. Would you like to have coffee sometime? Not here. Somewhere else. Somewhere we could just talk. Grace's heart started beating faster. Like a date? Like two people getting to know each other. No pressure, no expectations. Grace thought about Liam's warnings, about Marisol's concerns, about hotel policies and power imbalances and all the reasons this was a bad idea. Then she thought about the way Ethan had looked at her in the grocery store, the way he'd asked permission instead of assuming. The way he'd spent 10 years alone because someone had hurt him. When? She asked. Relief flickered across Ethan's face. Tomorrow evening? After your shift? I work until 6. Perfect. There's a coffee shop called Grind on Maple Street. Do you know it? Grace nodded. It was a small, quiet place where college students studied and freelancers worked on laptops. Not fancy, but comfortable. 7 o'clock? Ethan asked. 7 o'clock? They smiled at each other, both nervous and excited. I should go, Grace said. People will start to wonder why I'm standing around talking instead of working. Of course. I'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Grace walked away on shaky legs. She'd just agreed to have coffee with a millionaire. A millionaire who hadn't been alone with a woman in 10 years. A millionaire who made her heart race when he smiled. This could be the best decision she'd ever made. Or the worst. That evening, Grace called Liam from her room. I need to tell you something, she said when he answered. Uh-oh. What did you do? I'm having coffee with Ethan tomorrow night. Silence. Liam, are you there? I'm here. I'm just trying to figure out how to talk you out of this without sounding like a controlling big brother. You're not my big brother. You're my little brother. By 5 years. Details. Grace, are you sure about this? No, I'm not sure about anything, but I want to try. Liam sighed. Okay, but I have conditions. You have conditions? First, you meet him in public, somewhere with lots of people. Already planned. Second, you drive yourself. Don't let him pick you up. I don't have a car, Liam. I'll take the bus. Third, you text me when you get there and when you leave. Fine. And fourth, if he tries anything weird, you call me immediately. I don't care if I'm in class or at work. Grace smiled. He's not going to try anything weird. Rich guys define weird differently than the rest of us. Will you stop calling him rich guy? His name is Ethan. Fine. If Ethan tries anything weird, you call me. Deal. And Grace? Yeah? Be careful with your heart. You've got a good one, and I don't want to see it broken. After they hung up, Grace sat on her bed and tried to figure out what to wear to coffee with a millionaire. Her closet wasn't exactly full of options. She settled on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater. Simple, but nice. She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard, or like she wasn't trying at all. Grace looked at herself in the small mirror above her dresser. She looked nervous, excited, scared. She looked like a woman about to take a big risk. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The next day dragged by like thick honey. Grace cleaned rooms and changed sheets and tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept wandering to 7 o'clock. What would they talk about? What if she said something stupid? What if he realized she wasn't interesting enough for a man like him? What if Liam was right, and this whole thing was a mistake? At 5:30, Grace rushed back to her room to get ready. She showered and put on her good jeans and the blue sweater. She brushed her hair until it shined and put on a little makeup. Not too much. She wanted to look like herself, just a better version. At 6:45, she caught the bus to Maple Street. The ride took 15 minutes, which gave her plenty of time to second-guess everything. Maybe she should cancel. Maybe this was too complicated. Maybe she should stick to her safe, predictable life and stop dreaming about things that were out of reach. But when the bus stopped at Maple Street, Grace got off. Grind Coffee Shop was exactly as she remembered it. Warm lights, mismatched furniture, the smell of coffee beans and freshly baked pastries. Grace looked through the window and saw Ethan sitting at a small table near the back. He was reading something on his phone and drinking what looked like black coffee. He'd changed out of his suit into jeans and a gray sweater. He looked younger, more relaxed, more like someone she might actually have a chance with. Grace took a deep breath and pushed open the door. This was it. No turning back now. Ethan looked up and smiled when he saw her, a real smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. You came, he said, standing up. I said I would. I wasn't sure. I thought you might change your mind. I almost did, about 6 times. Ethan laughed. I almost called to cancel, about 12 times. They looked at each other for a moment, both admitting they were nervous. It was oddly comforting. Should I get coffee? Grace asked. Please, what do you like? Just coffee with cream. I'll get it. Sit down. Grace watched Ethan walk to the counter. He moved with quiet confidence, like someone who was used to being in charge but didn't need to prove it. When he came back with her coffee, Grace noticed his hands were steady, no shaking like that first night in the hotel lobby. "Thank you," she said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "Thank you for coming." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both sipping their coffee and trying to figure out where to start. "This is nice," Grace said finally. "Better than a hotel lobby." "Much better." Grace looked around the coffee shop. Students bent over textbooks, a woman in scrubs typing on a laptop, an elderly man doing a crossword puzzle, regular people living regular lives like she was trying to do. "Can I ask you something?" Grace said. "Anything." "Yesterday, I heard you talking to someone in the hallway about the hotel, about occupancy rates and revenue." Ethan nodded. "That was Daniel, my business partner." "Are you thinking about buying the hotel?" "I already did last month." Grace felt the air leave her lungs. "You own the hotel." "Technically, my company owns it, but yes." "So you're my boss." Ethan's face fell. "I was afraid you'd see it that way." "How else should I see it?" "As a coincidence." "Grace, I had no idea you worked there when I bought the property. The investment was arranged through brokers and management companies. I never even toured the building until this week." Grace stared at her coffee. This changed everything. If Ethan owned the hotel, then dating him wasn't just against hotel policy. It was a conflict of interest that could destroy her career. "I should go," she said, starting to stand up. "Please don't." "Ethan, this is complicated." "It doesn't have to be. You own the building where I live. You control my paycheck. How is that not complicated?" Ethan ran his hands through his hair. "You're right. It is complicated. But Grace, I don't want to be your boss. I want to be your friend. Maybe more if you'll let me. It doesn't matter what we want. It matters how things look." "To who?" "To everyone. To the other employees. To Mr. Klein. To the whole world." Grace stood up and grabbed her purse. "I'm sorry. I can't do this." "Grace, wait." But she was already walking toward the door. Her heart was pounding and her eyes were burning with tears she refused to let fall. Behind her, she heard Ethan call her name one more time, but she didn't turn around. Grace barely slept that night. She stared at the ceiling until 3 a.m, replaying the conversation at the coffee shop over and over. Ethan owned the hotel. Her hotel. The place where she lived and worked and tried to build some kind of life for herself. How could she not have known? How could something that big happen without anyone talking about it? But then again, who would tell a maid about business deals? Who would think she needed to know? Grace's phone buzzed, a text message. "I'm sorry, can we please talk?" Ethan Grace stared at the message for a long time. Then she turned off her phone and buried her face in her pillow. The next morning felt like walking through mud. Grace put on her uniform and tried to pretend everything was normal, but her hands shook as she tied her hair back, and she had to redo her name tag twice. In the staff room, Tasha was complaining about a guest who wanted fresh towels every 2 hours. "Some people have way too much time and money," Tasha said, rolling her eyes. "Speaking of money," Marco said, "did you guys hear about the new owner?" Grace's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. "What new owner?" Tasha asked. "Some rich guy bought the place last month. Investment company or something. Mr. Klein's been walking around all nervous, trying to make everything perfect." "Think anything will change?" Tasha asked. Marco shrugged. "Rich guys usually want more money and less workers. Probably means longer hours and smaller paychecks." Grace set down her coffee. Her stomach felt sick. "You okay, Grace?" Tasha asked. "You look pale." "I'm fine, just tired." But she wasn't fine. She was thinking about Ethan sitting across from her in the coffee shop, looking sad when she said he was her boss. She was thinking about the way he'd asked her to stay, like it mattered to him. She was thinking about how stupid she'd been to believe things could be simple between them. Grace spent the morning cleaning rooms on the 4th floor. Every time the elevator dinged, her heart jumped. Every time she heard voices in the hallway, she wondered if one of them was Ethan's. But she didn't see him. Maybe he'd checked out. Maybe he'd decided she wasn't worth the trouble. Maybe that was for the best. Around noon, Grace was replacing towels in the bathroom of room 408 when she noticed something. Men's toiletries on the counter, expensive ones, a toothbrush and shaving cream and cologne that probably cost more than she made in a week. Room 408. The suite Mr. Klein had given Ethan after the mix-up. Grace's heart started beating faster. She grabbed the towels and tried to leave quickly, but the bathroom door was narrow and she bumped into the doorframe. Grace? She turned around. Ethan stood in the main room, wearing jeans and a white button-down shirt. His hair was messy like he'd been running his hands through it. "I'm sorry," Grace said quickly. "I didn't know you were here. I can come back later." "No, it's okay. I was just—" Ethan gestured at his laptop on the desk. "Working." They stared at each other for a moment. Grace noticed dark circles under his eyes, like maybe he hadn't slept much either. "How are you?" he asked quietly. "Fine." "Grace, about last night, I can't talk about this here. Someone might see." "Then where? When?" Grace looked around the room. It was beautiful. King-size bed with soft white linens, a sitting area with a couch and coffee table, windows that actually opened to let in fresh air. Nothing like her tiny staff room with its narrow bed and no windows. "I have to go," she said. "Grace, please, 5 minutes. That's all I need." 5 minutes to say what? To explain, to apologize, to ask you not to give up on whatever this is. Grace felt tears burning behind her eyes. "There is no this, Ethan. There can't be. Because I own the building. Because you own my life." The way words came out louder than she meant. Grace looked toward the door, terrified someone had heard. Ethan stepped closer, not too close, but close enough that she could see the pain in his eyes. "I don't want to own your life," he said. "I want to be part of it." "It's the same thing, don't you see? You could fire me tomorrow if I made you angry. You could kick me out of my room if you wanted someone else to have it. You could— I would never do any of those things." "How do I know that? How does anyone know that?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "You don't. You have to trust me." "Trust?" Grace laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's what everyone keeps saying. Trust. But trust is a luxury I can't afford." "What do you mean?" "I mean I can't risk everything on maybe. I can't bet my job and my home and my brother's future on whether some rich guy will still like me next month." The words hit Ethan like a slap. Grace saw him flinch. "Is that what you think I am? Some rich guy who changes his mind when he gets bored? I think you're a man who lives in a different world than I do. And I think you'll figure that out eventually." Grace headed for the door, but Ethan's voice stopped her. "My parents were divorced when I was 12. Grace turned around, surprised by the change of subject. "My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us in our apartment," Ethan continued, "cleaning offices at night, serving lunch at a diner during the day, doing laundry for other people on weekends." Grace stared at him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you think I don't understand what it's like to worry about money, to work until your feet ache and your back hurts and you're so tired you can barely think straight." That was a long time ago. Not that long, and not long enough to forget. Ethan sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. "When I was 15, our landlord tried to evict us because my mom was 2 days late with rent. 2 days. She'd worked a double shift and hadn't been able to get to the bank." Grace felt something shift inside her chest, a wall she'd built starting to crack. What happened? She begged, literally got on her knees and begged him not to throw us out, promised she'd pay extra the next month, promised she'd clean his house for free. "Did he let you stay?" "Yeah, but I swore that day I'd never let anyone have that kind of power over me again. I'd never be in a position where someone else controlled whether I had a roof over my head." Grace understood then why Ethan had worked so hard to become successful, why he bought buildings instead of renting them, why he kept his distance from situations he couldn't control, like relationships, like love. "So you see," Ethan said, "I do understand what you're afraid of. I've been afraid of the same thing my whole life. Then you understand why I can't do this." "No, I understand why you think you can't. But Grace, I'm not your landlord. I'm not someone who's going to use my position to hurt you." "How do I know that?" "Because I'm telling you. Because I'm asking you to trust me, and I'm promising not to break that trust. People break promises all the time. Some people do, I don't." Grace wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it hurt, but wanting something didn't make it safe. "I have to go," she said again. This time Ethan didn't try to stop her. The rest of Grace's shift passed in a blur. She cleaned rooms and changed sheets and tried not to think about the conversation in room 408. But Ethan's words kept echoing in her head. His mother on her knees, begging not to be thrown out. A 15-year-old boy watching and promising himself he'd never be that powerless again. Grace knew that feeling, the helplessness, the fear of losing everything because someone else made the rules. She'd felt it when her father left, when her mother cried over bills they couldn't pay, when her high school guidance counselor told her college wasn't realistic for someone in her situation. She felt it every month when she counted out rent money and grocery money and tried to stretch what was left until the next paycheck. But knowing Ethan understood didn't change the facts. He still owned the hotel. He still controlled her job. He still had the power to change her life with one phone call. And she still couldn't risk everything on trust. That evening, Grace sat in her room with a cup of instant soup and tried to read a library book. But she couldn't focus on the words. Her phone had been buzzing all day. Text messages from Ethan that she hadn't answered. I meant what I said about trust. Can we at least be friends? I don't want things to be weird when you see me around the hotel. Please just tell me you're okay. Grace finally turned off her phone and put it in her drawer. Around 9 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. Grace looked through the peephole and saw Marisol holding a bag from the Chinese restaurant down the street. I brought dinner, Marisol said when Grace opened the door. You looked like you were having a rough day. Grace let her in gratefully. She was tired of being alone with her thoughts. Rough is putting it mildly, Grace said as they unpacked the food. Want to talk about it? Grace hesitated. Then she found herself telling Marisol everything about the coffee shop, about Ethan owning the hotel, about the conversation in room 408. Marisol listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. So now you know why I was asking about guests yesterday, Grace finished. I was already in over my head and I didn't even know it. Marisol was quiet for a moment, eating her lo mein and thinking. You know, she said finally, I've been working in hotels for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of rich men who thought the staff was there for their entertainment. And this one doesn't feel like that. Grace looked up, surprised. What do you mean? I mean, he's been here for 4 days, and he hasn't once treated any of us like servants. He says please and thank you. He doesn't leave messes for us to clean up. He doesn't snap his fingers or act like his time is more important than ours. Maybe he's just polite. Maybe. Or maybe he remembers what it was like to be on our side of things. Grace thought about Ethan's story, about his mother working 3 jobs and begging the landlord not to evict them. That doesn't change the situation, Grace said. He still owns the place. No, it doesn't change anything. But it might mean he's not the kind of person who would use that against you. Might isn't good enough, Mari. I can't risk my job on might. Marisol nodded. I know, mija, but can I ask you something? Sure. Are you saying no because you're being smart, or are you saying no because you're scared? The question hit Grace like a punch to the stomach. What's the difference? Smart is looking at the situation and making a careful decision based on facts. Scared is letting fear make the decision for you. Of course I'm scared. I should be scared. Should you? Or are you letting what other people did to you decide what this person might do? Grace stared at her food. I don't know how to tell the difference anymore. That's the problem with trust, Marisol said gently. It requires a leap of faith. And when people have hurt you, leaping feels impossible. So what do? I can't answer that for you. But I will say this, I've watched you for 2 years. You're smart, Grace. You're careful. You don't make stupid decisions. This feels like a stupid decision. Maybe. Or maybe it feels big and scary because it matters. After Marisol left, Grace sat on her bed and thought about fear versus wisdom, about trust versus stupidity, about the difference between protecting yourself and hiding from life. She thought about Ethan's face when she'd called him some rich guy, the hurt in his eyes when she'd said he lived in a different world. She thought about the way he'd looked when he talked about his mother, like a boy who'd grown up understanding powerlessness. Grace picked up her phone and turned it back on. 12 missed calls from an unknown number, 3 voicemails. She almost deleted them without listening. Then she changed her mind and pressed play on the first one. Grace, it's Liam. I know you probably don't want to talk to me after yesterday, but something happened at work tonight. Can you call me back? The second message. Grace, seriously, call me. I think I screwed up. The third message. Okay, I'm coming over. I know you're probably asleep, but I need to talk to you. Grace looked at the clock. It was almost 11. Liam's shift at Murphy's ended at 10. Before she could decide what to do, there was a knock on her door. Grace opened it to find her brother standing in the hallway, still, wearing his work uniform and looking miserable. Thank God, Liam said. I was worried you were ignoring me. My phone was off. What's wrong? Liam came into the room and sat down heavily in Grace's chair. I met your Ethan tonight. Grace's heart stopped. What? He came into the diner around 9:30, ordered coffee and pie, and sat at the counter reading something on his phone. How do you know it was him? Because he asked if I was Liam Miller. Said he was a friend of yours. Grace felt panic rising in her chest. What did you say? I said I was your brother, and I asked what he wanted. Liam, please tell me you didn't. I basically told him to stay away from you. Grace closed her eyes. Oh no. I told him you were a good person and you didn't need some rich guy messing with your life. I told him if he really cared about you, he'd leave you alone. What did he say? Liam looked miserable. That's the problem. He didn't argue with me. He didn't get angry or defensive. He just nodded and said he was worried about the same thing. Grace opened her eyes. What do you mean? He said he cared about you too much to hurt you, and that maybe I was right about him staying away. So he's leaving? I don't know. Maybe. Grace, I think I made a huge mistake. Why? Because he wasn't what I expected. He wasn't arrogant or pushy or fake. He was just sad. Really, really sad. Grace sat down on her bed. What else did he say? He asked if I was the brother who was working his way through college. I said yes, and he said you were proud of me, that you talked about me all the time. I do talk about you all the time. He said he wished he had family like that, someone who believed in him the way you believe in me. Grace felt her chest tighten. He doesn't have family. Not from what I could tell. Grace, I think this guy is really lonely. Like, really, really lonely. Grace thought about Ethan's story, about 10 years of keeping his distance from people, about being afraid to trust anyone enough to let them close. There's something else, Liam said. After he paid for his coffee, he left an envelope for you, said to give it to you if I thought it was the right thing to do. What kind of envelope? Liam pulled a white envelope out of his jacket pocket. Grace's name was written on the front in the same careful handwriting as before. Are you going to read it? Liam asked. Grace took the envelope and turned it over in her hands. I don't know. Grace, I owe you an apology. I was so worried about you getting hurt that I didn't stop to think about what you wanted. I don't know what I want. Yeah, you do. You're just scared to want it. Grace looked at her little brother. When had he gotten so wise? What if it doesn't work out, she asked. What if it does? What if he changes his mind? What if I lose my job? What if... Grace, stop. You can't live your whole life afraid of what if. Says, the boy who made me promise to text him every hour when I went to coffee with a stranger. Liam smiled. That's different. That's big brother stuff. Little brother stuff. Details. Liam stood up and kissed the top of her head. Read the letter, Grace, and then decide what you want to do. Not what you think you should do, what you want to do. After Liam left, Grace sat on her bed holding the envelope. Her hands were shaking slightly. She could throw it away, pretend none of this had happened, go back to her safe, predictable life and try to forget about dark brown eyes and sad smiles and the way Ethan had looked when he talked about his mother. Or she could take a leap of faith. Grace opened the envelope. Dear Grace, I talked to your brother tonight. He's a good man who loves you very much. He's also right about me staying away from you, not because I don't care, because I do care. More than I've cared about anyone in a very long time. I told myself I was being careful when I bought the hotel through brokers and management companies. I told myself I was being professional by keeping my distance from day-to-day operations. But the truth is, I was being a coward. I was hiding behind lawyers and business arrangements because it felt safer than actually getting to know the people whose lives I was affecting. I understand why you can't trust me. I understand why the situation feels impossible. I even understand why your brother thinks you'd be better off without me. But I want you to know that walking into your room that first night was the best accident of my life. Not just because I met you, but because you saw me. Really saw me. Not my bank account or my reputation or my past mistakes, just me. I haven't felt seen in a very long time. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'll conduct my business remotely and only visit the property when necessary. I won't put you in the position of having to see me around the hotel. But before I go, I want you to know something. You deserve to be cherished, Grace Miller. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are. You deserve all the good things life has to offer. I'm sorry I couldn't be the person to give those things to you. Take care of yourself. And don't let anyone convince you to settle for less than you deserve. With more affection than I have any right to feel, Ethan Grace read the letter 3 times before the tears started falling. He was leaving. Tomorrow morning. Because he thought it was best for her. Because her brother had convinced him to stay away. Because she'd convinced him she could never trust him. Grace looked around her tiny room, at the narrow bed and the small table and the walls that felt like they were closing in on her. This was safe. This was predictable. This was the life she'd built to protect herself from being hurt. But it was also lonely. So lonely. Grace grabbed her jacket and her room key. She had to find Ethan before it was too late. She had to tell him that maybe, just maybe, she was brave enough to try. Grace took the stairs 2 at a time, her heart pounding with every step. The hallway on the 4th floor was quiet. Most guests were asleep or settled in for the night. She stood in front of room 408 for a full minute, trying to work up the courage to knock. What if he'd already left? What if he didn't want to see her? What if she was too late? Grace raised her hand and knocked softly. Footsteps. The sound of the door chain being removed. Then the door opened, and Ethan stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, looking surprised and hopeful and scared all at once. Grace? Can I come in, please? Ethan stepped aside to let her pass. Grace noticed his suitcase open on the bed, half packed with clothes. You're really leaving, she said. I thought it was best. For who? For you. Grace turned to face him. What if I don't want you to go? Ethan closed the door and leaned against it. Grace, you made it very clear that you can't do this, that you can't trust me. I was scared. I know. And you have every right to be scared. But maybe scared isn't the same thing as smart. Ethan's eyes searched her face. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe I've been so busy protecting myself from being hurt that I forgot how to live. Grace walked over to the window and looked out at the city lights. I've been thinking about what you said, about your mother and the landlord and being powerless. Grace? I felt powerless my whole life, Ethan, when my dad left, when I couldn't afford college, when I had to move into a room the size of a closet and call it home. She turned around to face him. But you know what? Walking away from you wouldn't give me power. It would just be another way of letting fear make my choices for me. Ethan stepped closer. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe trust isn't about guarantees. Maybe it's about choosing to believe in someone even when you can't be sure. And, Grace took a deep breath, and I choose to believe in you. Ethan's face went soft. Grace, are you sure? No, I'm not sure about anything, but I'm tired of letting fear run my life. It's still complicated. I still own the hotel. People will still talk. Then we'll figure it out. Together. Ethan crossed the room in 3 quick steps and pulled Grace into his arms. She felt his heart beating fast against her chest, felt his breath warm against her hair. Are you really sure? He whispered. I'm really sure that I don't want you to leave. That's enough for now. They held each other in the middle of the hotel room, 2 people who'd spent years building walls finally brave enough to tear them down. So what happens now? Grace asked. Now we take it one day at a time. We figure out how to make this work without putting your job at risk. We learn to trust each other. And if people talk, let them talk. We know the truth. Grace pulled back to, look at his face. Your brother was right about one thing. What's that? I do deserve to be cherished. Ethan smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Yes, you do. And so do you. For the first time in 10 years, Ethan Cole believed that might actually be true. Outside, the city hummed with late-night life. Inside room 408, two lonely people discovered what it felt like to not be alone anymore. It felt like coming home. 3 weeks later, Grace stood in front of her bathroom mirror, getting ready for her first day at the Riverside Hotel, the sister property across town that Marisol had told her about. The front desk position had opened up just like Marisol said it would. Better pay, a small studio apartment instead of a staff room, and most importantly, no direct connection to Ethan's investment portfolio. Grace smoothed down her new blouse and took a deep breath. Today felt like the first day of the rest of her life. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Good luck today. You're going to be amazing." Grace smiled and texted back. "Thank you. Coffee after my shift?" "Wouldn't miss it." Grace grabbed her purse and headed out the door. As she walked to the bus stop, she thought about how much had changed in just 3 weeks. After that night in room 408, she and Ethan had spent hours talking about the future, about how to navigate their relationship without putting her job at risk, about taking things slowly and doing everything the right way. Ethan had suggested the transfer before Grace even thought of it. He didn't want there to be any question about impropriety or favoritism. He wanted to protect her reputation as much as his own. "I care about you too much to put your career in danger," he'd said, and Grace had realized that was exactly what love looked like. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but someone who thought about your future as much as their own. The Riverside Hotel was smaller than Grace's old workplace, but brighter. Big windows in the lobby let in natural light. The staff seemed friendlier, less stressed. Grace's new manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, was patient and kind as she showed Grace around the front desk system. "You'll do fine," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "Marisol spoke very highly of you, said you were one of the hardest workers she'd ever supervised." Grace felt a warm glow in her chest. It was nice to be recognized for her work ethic, not just her ability to clean bathrooms quickly. The morning passed in a blur of learning new procedures and meeting coworkers. Grace handled check-ins and check-outs, answered phone calls, and helped guests with directions to local restaurants. She was good at it. Really good. Grace had always been observant, always noticed what people needed before they asked. Those skills that had made her a good maid made her an excellent front desk clerk. Around noon, a familiar voice made her look up from her computer. "Excuse me, could you tell me what time the coffee shop down the street opens?" Mrs. Harper stood at the desk, smiling warmly, the older guest from Grace's old hotel who had always been kind to the staff. "Mrs. Harper, what are you doing here?" "My dear, I could ask you the same thing, though I must say, you look wonderful behind that desk." Grace beamed. "I got promoted. Well, transferred. I'm working front desk now." "How marvelous. I always thought you were wasted on housekeeping. You have such a lovely way with people." "Thank you. Are you staying here now?" "Just for a few days. My daughter lives nearby, and I'm visiting my new grandbaby." Mrs. Harper leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Between you and me, dear, how are things going with that handsome gentleman, Mr. Cole?" Grace felt her cheeks warm. "How did you—" "Oh, my dear, it was written all over both your faces. The way he looked at you, the way you blushed when he spoke to you. An old romantic like me notices these things." "We're figuring things out," Grace said carefully. "Good. You deserve someone who sees how special you are, and from what I observed, he certainly does." After Mrs. Harper went up to her room, Grace found herself smiling as she worked. It was nice to know that not everyone would judge her relationship with Ethan. Some people, like Mrs. Harper, just wanted to see two lonely people find happiness together. That evening, Grace met Ethan at a small cafe near her new apartment. It was becoming their routine. No fancy restaurants that would make Grace uncomfortable. No expensive places that highlighted the difference in their bank accounts. Just quiet spots where they could talk and get to know each other. "How was the first day?" Ethan asked as they sat down with their coffee. "Good, really good. I think I'm going to like it there." "I'm glad. You deserve a job that appreciates your talents." Grace reached across the table and took his hand. 3 weeks ago, she wouldn't have been brave enough to touch him in public. Now it felt natural. "How was your day?" she asked. "Productive. I had a meeting with the management company about some renovations at your old hotel. Oh? What kind of renovations? Better staff facilities, larger break room, individual bathrooms for the staff rooms instead of shared ones down the hall. Grace stared at him. You're doing that because of me, aren't you? Because of my tiny room with no bathroom. Ethan looked slightly embarrassed. Maybe partly, but also because it's the right thing to do. People deserve dignity at work, regardless of their position. This was what Grace loved most about Ethan. He didn't just say he cared about workers' rights. He actually did something about it. Have you heard from Liam lately? Ethan asked. He called yesterday. Still feels bad about that night at the diner. He shouldn't. He was protecting you. I respect that. He wants to have dinner with us this weekend. All three of us. He says he owes you an apology. He doesn't owe me anything, but I'd like that. I'd like to get to know your brother better. Grace smiled. Fair warning, he's probably going to grill you about your intentions. Good. A woman should have people looking out for her. They talked for an hour, sharing details about their days, making plans for the weekend. Simple, everyday conversations that felt precious because they'd both gone so long without them. As they walked toward Grace's new apartment building, Ethan took her hand. Grace, can I ask you something? Always? Do you ever regret it, taking the risk with me? Grace stopped walking and turned to face him. Never. Do you? Never. But sometimes I worry that I'm not enough for you. That you're settling for something complicated when you could have something simple with someone else. Grace reached up and touched his face. Ethan Cole, you listen to me. You are not something I'm settling for. You're something I'm choosing. Every day I choose you. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard. Easy doesn't mean better. Ethan kissed her then, right there on the sidewalk under the streetlights, gentle and sure and full of promise. When they broke apart, Grace saw a woman walking by, staring at them with a disapproving frown. An interracial couple was still something some people had trouble with. Let her look, Grace said, echoing what she'd told Ethan weeks ago in the hotel lobby. Are you sure? I'm sure. We have nothing to be ashamed of. Ethan smiled and kissed her forehead. I love your courage. I'm learning it from you. 2 months later, Grace was working the evening shift at Riverside when she got a surprise visitor. Marisol walked through the lobby doors, dressed up and smiling. Marie, what are you doing here? Can't a woman visit her favorite former employee? Grace came around the desk and hugged her mentor. It's so good to see you. You look happy, Marisol observed. Really, truly happy. I am. How are things at the old place? Good. The renovations are almost done. You should see the new staff rooms. They're twice as big as the old ones, and everyone gets their own bathroom. Ethan told me about that. He's a good man, Grace. The staff all like him. He actually listens when Mr. Klein brings him concerns about working conditions. Grace felt a swell of pride. He cares about doing the right thing. Speaking of which, Marisol said, I have news. I'm getting married. Marie, that's wonderful. Who's the lucky man? Remember Tony, the security guard? We've been dating for 6 months. Grace clapped her hands together. I'm so happy for you. When's the wedding? Next spring. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. And Grace, I want you to be my maid of honor. Grace felt tears spring to her eyes. Really? Really, you're like a daughter to me, Mija. I can't imagine getting married without you there. They hugged again, both crying a little. Can I bring a date? Grace asked with a grin. I think that can be arranged. That weekend, Grace, Ethan, and Liam had dinner at Murphy's Diner. It had taken some convincing to get Ethan to agree to eat at Liam's workplace, but Grace insisted. She wanted him to see the place that was important to her brother. Liam was nervous, fumbling with the coffee pot as he served them. Relax, Grace told him. You're making me nervous. I just want everything to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, Ethan said gently. It just has to be honest. As the evening progressed, Grace watched Liam slowly warm up to Ethan. They talked about Liam's business classes, about his plans after graduation, about his dreams of maybe opening his own restaurant someday. That's a good dream, Ethan said. The hospitality industry needs more people who actually care about hospitality. Would you ever want to invest in something like that? Liam asked. A restaurant, I mean. Grace held her breath. Was her brother asking Ethan for money? But Ethan handled it perfectly. I'd be happy to look at a business plan when you're ready. Not as Grace's boyfriend, but as someone who invests in good ideas and hard-working people. I haven't even finished school yet. When you do, take your time, build your skills, learn the business. Good ideas are worth waiting for. Later, as they walked back to Grace's apartment, Liam pulled her aside. I like him, he said quietly. I really like him. What changed your mind? He didn't promise me things he couldn't deliver. He didn't try to impress me. He just talked to me like I was worth talking to. He is pretty great. Grace? Yeah? I'm sorry I almost messed this up for you. I was scared you'd get hurt, but I was wrong to try to make the decision for you. You were protecting me. That's what family does. Still, you're happy and that's what matters. He makes you happy. Grace looked back at Ethan, who was waiting patiently by her building entrance. Yeah, she said. He really does. 6 months later, Grace stood in the hotel courtyard where she used to work, surrounded by familiar faces. The combined staff appreciation event that Mr. Klein had organized to celebrate the completion of the renovations. Grace wore a simple blue dress and felt more confident than she had in years. She belonged here, not as someone's employee or someone's girlfriend, but as herself. Ethan stood beside her, comfortable and relaxed. Over the past few months, he'd made an effort to get to know the hotel staff as people, not just workers. He remembered their names, asked about their families, listened to their suggestions for improvements. Grace? Tasha ran over and hugged her. Look at you, all fancy in your dress clothes. Look at you, Grace replied. I heard you got promoted to head of housekeeping. Can you believe it? Me in charge of other people. I can absolutely believe it. You were always the hardest worker on the team. Tasha beamed. And look who's here with a boyfriend, a handsome one too. Grace felt Ethan's hand find hers and squeeze gently. Tasha, this is Ethan. Ethan, this is Tasha, one of my favorite former co-workers. Nice to meet you, Ethan said, shaking Tasha's hand. Grace has told me a lot about you. All good things, I hope. Nothing but good things. As they mingled with the other guests, Grace noticed something. No one was whispering about her and Ethan. No one was making snide comments or judgmental looks. They were just seen as a couple, like any other couple. Maybe it was because Grace no longer worked directly for the hotel. Maybe it was because people had gotten used to seeing them together. Or maybe people were just more accepting than she'd given them credit for. Grace, dear, Mrs. Harper appeared beside them, elegant as always in a lavender dress. Mrs. Harper, I didn't know you were in town. I couldn't miss the party. Plus, I wanted to see the renovations everyone's been talking about. Grace introduced Ethan, who was charming and polite as always. Young man, Mrs. Harper said to Ethan, I hope you know what a treasure you have in this young lady. I do, ma'am, every day. Good. See that you don't forget it. Mrs. Harper winked at Grace and moved on to compliment Marisol on her engagement ring. As the afternoon wore on, Grace found herself standing with Ethan near the staff wing, looking down the hallway toward her old room. Do you want to see it? Ethan asked. The new staff facilities? Sure. They walked down the familiar hallway to room 112. The door was open, and Grace could see inside. The room was at least twice as big as her old one. It had a real window that let in natural light, a small sitting area with a chair and table, and most importantly, a private bathroom with a real shower. It's beautiful, Grace said. It's what everyone should have had from the beginning. Grace thought about all the nights she'd spent in the old room, lonely, scared, wondering if this was all her life would ever be. Now she had her own studio apartment with big windows and a kitchen. She had a job she enjoyed, working with people who respected her skills. She had friends and family who supported her, and she had Ethan, kind, thoughtful Ethan who made her feel cherished every single day. Do you ever think about that first night, Grace asked, when you walked into my room by mistake? All the time. Do you still think it was an accident? Ethan smiled. I think maybe some accidents are actually fate. Is that what you believe? In fate? I believe in you. I believe in us. I believe in the choice we made to trust each other. Grace leaned against his shoulder. What do you think happens next? Next, we keep building, keep choosing each other, keep figuring out how to make this work. Sounds pretty good to me. Grace? Yeah? I love you. It was the first time either of them had said the words out loud. Grace felt her heart expand with warmth and joy. I love you too. They kissed in the hallway of the hotel where they'd met, surrounded by the sounds of celebration and new beginnings. Later, as they walked toward Grace's apartment in the golden light of late afternoon, Ethan said, I was thinking about something. What? Maybe it's time for me to find a new place to live, something that feels more like home. Where were you thinking? Somewhere close to you, if you'd like that. Grace stopped walking and turned to face him. Are you asking me to move in with you? I'm asking if you'd like to look for a place together, when you're ready. No pressure. Grace thought about her small studio apartment, about the life she'd built for herself, piece by piece, paycheck by paycheck. Then she thought about building something even better with Ethan, not because she needed rescuing, but because they wanted to share their lives. I'd like that, she said, when I'm ready. When you're ready. They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, hand in hand, toward whatever came next. 1 year later, Grace stood in the kitchen of the small house she and Ethan had bought together. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. 2 bedrooms, a front porch, and a backyard where they could plant a garden. She was making breakfast when Ethan's arms wrapped around her from behind. Good morning, he murmured against her neck. Good morning. Sleep well? Always when you're beside me. Grace leaned back against his chest and smiled. Some mornings she still couldn't believe this was her life, that she got to wake up next to someone who loved her completely. What's your day look like? Ethan asked. Training the new front desk clerk at work. She's nervous, but she'll do fine. What about you? Meeting with Daniel about the new property, and lunch with Liam to go over his business plan. Grace turned in his arms. How's the restaurant plan coming along? Really well. He's got a solid concept and realistic projections. I think it could work. Are you going to invest? Probably, but only if he promises to hire his sister as his marketing consultant when he gets big enough. Grace laughed. I don't know anything about marketing. You know about people. You know about making them feel welcome and valued. That's the best marketing there is. Grace kissed him softly. I love you. I love you too. As they ate breakfast together, Grace's phone rang. Marisol's name appeared on the screen. Mari, how was the honeymoon? Wonderful. Tony and I had the best time in Hawaii. But listen, I have news, big news. What? Mr. Klein is retiring. The hotel needs a new general manager. Grace felt her stomach flip. That's huge. Grace, they offered me the job. Mari, that's incredible. Congratulations. Thank you, but here's the thing. I need an assistant manager, someone I trust, someone who knows the business and cares about the people. Grace was quiet for a moment, processing what Marisol was saying. Are you offering me a job? Grace asked. I'm offering you a career, management track, good salary, real opportunities for advancement. Grace looked at Ethan, who was listening with interest. Can I think about it? Of course. But Grace, you'd be perfect for this. You have all the skills, and more importantly, you have the heart for it. After they hung up, Ethan reached across the table and took Grace's hand. That's amazing, he said. It's also terrifying. Why? Because it's back at your hotel. People might think you got me the job. Grace, look at me. She met his eyes. You earned this opportunity. Marisol didn't offer you the job because you're dating me. She offered it because you're good at what you do. Are you sure? I'm positive, and anyone who suggests otherwise doesn't know you very well. Grace squeezed his hand. What do you think I should do? I think you should do whatever makes you happy, whatever feels right for your career and your future. Our future. Our future. Grace thought about the scared young woman who had grabbed a spray bottle when a stranger walked into her room. That woman never could have imagined sitting in her own kitchen, in her own house, discussing career opportunities with the man she loved. I think I want to say yes, Grace said. Then say yes. Just like that? Just like that? Grace picked up her phone and called Marisol back. Mari, it's Grace. I'd like to accept the position. Wonderful. When can you start? How about Monday? 2 years later, Grace stood behind the front desk of the hotel where she'd once been invisible, wearing a crisp business suit and a name tag that read, Grace Miller, Assistant General Manager. The hotel was busier than ever. The renovations, combined with Marisol's excellent management and Grace's attention to guest satisfaction, had earned them a reputation as one of the best mid-range hotels in the city. Grace loved her job. She loved training new employees, solving problems, and making sure every guest felt welcomed and valued. She loved being able to make policies that treated workers fairly and with dignity. But most of all, she loved proving to herself that she could do it, that the scared maid from room 112 could become a leader people respected and trusted. Around noon, a familiar figure walked through the lobby doors, Ethan carrying coffee and looking handsome in his business suit. "Good afternoon, Miss Miller," he said formally, approaching the desk. "Good afternoon, Mr. Cole. How can I help you today?" It was a game they played sometimes, pretending to be strangers meeting for the first time. "I was wondering if you might be free for lunch." "I might be. What did you have in mind?" "Nothing fancy. Just a quiet place where we can talk." Grace checked her schedule, though she already knew she was free. "I think I can manage that." As they walked toward the restaurant down the street, Grace noticed the ring box in Ethan's jacket pocket. She'd noticed it several times over the past few weeks, wondering when he would finally work up the courage to ask. "Grace," Ethan said as they sat down at their usual table, "there's something I want to ask you." "Oh?" Grace tried to look surprised. "We've been together for 2 years now. We've built a life together. A good life. The best life." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out the small velvet box. "I was wondering if you might want to make it official." Grace's heart started beating faster, even though she'd known this was coming. Ethan got down on one knee beside their table, ignoring the stares of other diners. "Grace Miller, you are the strongest, kindest, most amazing woman I've ever known. You've taught me how to trust again, how to hope again, how to love again. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant diamond ring. Grace felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her as the restaurant erupted in applause. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you too." As they held each other in the middle of the restaurant, Grace thought about the journey that had brought them here, all the fear and doubt and uncertainty that had led to this moment of perfect joy. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked. "That first night, when you walked into my room by mistake. Best mistake I ever made." "It wasn't a mistake," Grace said, echoing what she'd told him months ago. "It was a door opening, your heart finally answering when someone knocked." Ethan smiled and kissed her again. "I love your heart, Grace Miller, and I love that you chose to share it with me. Soon to be Grace Cole, soon to be Mrs. Cole." They sat back down to plan their wedding over coffee and pie, two people who had found their way to each other through storm and doubt and the simple courage to keep trying. Outside the restaurant windows, life in the city went on. People hurried to meetings, caught buses, worried about bills and bosses and all the ordinary struggles of ordinary life. But inside, at a small table by the window, two hearts that had been lonely for too long celebrated the extraordinary miracle of finding each other. Love, Grace had learned, didn't erase the past or guarantee the future, but it made the present beautiful enough to be worth any risk. And sometimes, when you were very lucky and very brave, love was enough to build a life on. In the end, Grace and Ethan learned that real love isn't about fairy tale perfection. It's about two imperfect people choosing each other every day, building trust one honest conversation at a time, and believing that together they can create something beautiful. They married the following spring in a small ceremony at Murphy's Diner, surrounded by family and friends who had watched them grow from strangers to partners to soulmates. Liam opened his restaurant 2 years later with Ethan as his business partner and Grace as his marketing consultant. Marisol remained general manager of the hotel until she retired, leaving it in Grace's capable hands. And sometimes, when she passed room 112 in the renovated staff wing, Grace remembered the scared young woman who had once lived there. And she smiled, knowing that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with someone walking through the wrong door at exactly the right time.